Hi, I'm Elara. My stepfather handcuffed me to a hospital bed while a soldier was bleeding out under my hands. He smirked as I begged to finish the emergency surgery. Playing doctor again, he said, like my medical degree was just a child's game. But his smirk disappeared when 5 generals walked in, followed by the Joint Chiefs. They saluted me, the youngest admiral in naval history. Some fights aren't just about saving one life, but proving you deserve your place in the world. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The helicopter blades cut through the dusty air as I finished securing the tourniquet. Sand whipped across the landing zone, stinging my eyes as I hunched over the wounded Marine. His blood seeped through my gloves, warm and persistent, a stark contrast to the cold determination I maintained. The forward operating base alarms blared in the distance. "Stay with me, Corporal," I said, checking his pulse again. Thready but present. The young man's eyes fluttered, consciousness slipping away despite my efforts. I administered another dose of morphine, calculating the timing in my head. The dust swirled around us as the medevac approached, its rhythmic chopping growing louder. The satellite phone in my pocket buzzed, insistent and unwelcome. I ignored it, focusing on the soldier whose life balanced on the edge of my medical training. The phone buzzed again. And again. Finally, I yanked it out with my bloodied hand. "Admiral Reed," I answered, voice clipped and professional despite the chaos surrounding me. "Elara." Commander Hargrove's voice came through, tight with tension. "We need you back at the main hospital. Now. Major incident, multiple casualties inbound." I glanced down at the soldier. "I'm stabilizing a critical patient for medevac. ETA to return is, immediately, Admiral," he cut in. "The convoy hit an IED. We've got 7 critical, 3 surgeons on duty. They need you in the OR." The medevac touched down 20 yards away, its rotors sending more dust and grit flying across the landing zone. 2 medics jumped out, running toward us with a stretcher. "Incoming." "I'll brief them and be on the next transport," I said, ending the call. I relayed the soldier's vitals and treatment to the medics, watching as they loaded him onto the helicopter. The winds from the rotors whipped my hair across my face, strands escaping from my tight bun. As the medevac lifted off, I wiped my forehead with my sleeve, leaving a streak of someone else's blood behind. The return transport was bumpy, the old Humvee rattling over unpaved roads. I used the time to close my eyes, allowing myself 30 seconds of darkness before the chaos that awaited me. My phone buzzed again. Not Commander Hargrove this time. Marcus Reed. My stepfather. I declined the call, sliding the phone back into my pocket. Whatever he wanted could wait. It always could, though he never seemed to understand that. The military hospital came into view, its bland exterior belying the life-and-death battles fought within. As I jumped from the vehicle, a nurse ran toward me. "Admiral, they're prepping OR2 for you. Abdominal trauma, arterial bleeding. They're trying to stabilize him now." I nodded, striding toward the entrance. "Get me the full workup. I need to scrub in immediately." Inside, the controlled chaos of a mass casualty event was in full swing. Medical personnel moved with purpose, voices calm but urgent. I headed straight for the scrub room, already mentally preparing for what awaited me. Commander Hargrove intercepted me, his face grim. Worst hit is Lieutenant Chen. Shrapnel tore through his abdomen, nicked the abdominal aorta. "He's barely hanging on. Blood products?" I asked, beginning to scrub my arms. 6 units in, more on standby. We're running low on oneg. I nodded, feeling the familiar focus descend. This was where I belonged, where everything else fell away. Not the politics of being the youngest woman to make admiral in naval history. Not the constant scrutiny. Not my stepfather's disapproval. Just medicine. Just saving lives. "Admiral Reed." A voice from the doorway made me turn. A young lieutenant stood there, looking uncomfortable. "Sir, there's someone insisting on seeing you. Says it's a family emergency." I didn't break my scrubbing rhythm. "Tell them I'm heading into surgery and will contact them after." The lieutenant shifted his weight. "Sir, he says he's your father. He's quite insistent." I felt my jaw tighten. Stepfather. And no. Lieutenant Chen is my priority. "Yes, sir." He disappeared, and I returned to my preparation. 10 minutes later, I was elbow deep in Lieutenant Chen's abdomen, working to repair the damage. Blood pooled faster than the suction could remove it. His vital signs wavered, dropping dangerously. "More suction," I ordered. "And get me another unit of plasma." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The OR doors burst open. Not the smooth, controlled way that medical personnel enter, but forcefully, disruptively. I didn't look up, couldn't afford to break concentration. You need to stop this immediately. The voice cut through the focused quiet of the operating room. A voice I recognized all too well. Get him out of here, I said evenly, not looking up from my work. My hands remained steady as I clamped off another bleeder. Elara, this has gone far enough. Marcus Reed stepped further into the room, his civilian clothes stark against the medical uniforms. He carried himself with the entitled confidence of a man used to getting his way. Your mother is waiting. This is ridiculous. The monitors beeped urgently as Lieutenant Chen's pressure dropped. I worked faster, my focus absolute. Despite the interruption. Sir, you cannot be in here, a nurse said firmly, moving to intercept him. This is a sterile environment. Marcus brushed past her. My stepdaughter is playing doctor when her mother needs her. Elara, enough of this charade. I placed another suture, ignoring him completely. Pressure's dropping. Push another unit. And get me the vascular clamps. Elara. His voice rose, filling the room. Your mother is having surgery tomorrow. A real surgery, not this military play acting. She needs you home. I finally looked up, meeting his eyes over my surgical mask. I am in the middle of saving this soldier's life. Get out of my ear now, or I will have security remove you. His face reddened, the vein in his forehead pulsing the way it did when he was about to explode. But before he could speak again, Commander Hargrove stepped between us. Sir, you need to leave. Now. His voice left no room for argument. Marcus pointed at me, his finger trembling with rage. Always the same. Always choosing this game over your real family. Your mother raised you alone while your father was off playing soldier, and now you're doing the same thing. The monitors began to alarm as Lieutenant Chen's heart rate became erratic. I turned back to my patient, blocking out everything else. VFib, called the anesthesiologist. Starting internal cardiac massage, I said, my hands moving with practiced precision. Charge the paddles. The familiar whine of the defibrillator charging filled the room. I worked methodically, refusing to let Marcus's presence affect me. Clear, I called, applying the internal paddles. Lieutenant Chen's body jerked. The monitor continued to show an erratic rhythm. Again, I ordered. And push one of AP. As we fought to save the lieutenant, I was vaguely aware of security entering, of Marcus's continued protests. But those sounds faded beneath the immediacy of the task before me. Normal sinus rhythm, announced the anesthesiologist finally. BP coming up. I exhaled slowly, returning to the vascular repair. Let's close this bleeder and get him stable. It was another hour before I stepped back from the table, stripping off my bloody gloves. Good work, everyone. Keep him in recovery, and I want updates every 30 minutes. I left the OR exhausted but satisfied. Lieutenant Chen would live. That was what mattered. As I pushed through the doors, I was met by Commander Hargrove. Your stepfather is waiting in my office, he said quietly. I couldn't get him to leave the hospital. I sighed, rolling my neck to release some of the tension. I'll deal with him. Want me to come with you? I shook my head. No. This is an old battle. The walk to Hargrove's office felt longer than usual. My surgical scrubs were spattered with blood, my hair falling from its bun, dark circles surely prominent under my eyes after 36 hours on duty. Not the image of an admiral, perhaps, but the reality of a combat surgeon. I opened the door. Without knocking. Marcus sat in Hargrove's chair, looking for all the world like he belonged there. He wore an expensive suit, his silver hair perfectly styled, his posture radiating authority. The contrast between us couldn't have been more stark. You had no right to enter my OR, I said, closing the door behind me. He leaned back, regarding me with the same dismissive look he'd given me since I was 12. And you have no right to ignore your mother when she needs you. This little adventure of yours has gone on long enough, Elara. Adventure? I repeated, too tired to muster real anger. I just saved a man's life while you threw a tantrum. Always so dramatic. He waved a dismissive hand. Your mother's surgery is tomorrow. She asked for you, though God knows why after how you've treated her. I crossed my arms. I spoke to Mom yesterday. Her surgery isn't for another 2 weeks, and she specifically told me not to worry about coming home because she knows I'm deployed. He stood, smoothing his jacket. Plans change. The doctor moved it up. She's scared, Elara, not that you'd understand. You've always been cold, just like your real father. The mention of my father sent a familiar ache through my chest. 20 years gone, killed in action when I was 15, and Marcus still couldn't say his name without contempt. I'm not leaving my post based on your say-so, Marcus. If Mom needs me, she can call me herself. His face hardened. Always so stubborn. So determined to play soldier like him. Look at you. He gestured to my bloodied scrubs. Is this what you want your life to be? Covered in other people's blood in some godforsaken desert? I'm a surgeon. And an admiral. This isn't playing anything. He laughed, the sound sharp and cutting. Admiral. Because they felt sorry for you after your father died. A pity promotion to make the Navy look progressive. I felt the old anger rise, the one I'd worked so hard to control. I earned my rank. Every step of it. Did you? He stepped closer. Or did they hand it to you because of your last name? Because your father was some kind of hero to these people? Before I could respond, the door opened behind me. A young corporal stood there, looking nervous. Admiral Reed, sorry to interrupt, but there's been another incident. 3 more casualties incoming, ETA 5 minutes. I nodded. Prep. Or 1. I'll be right there. As the corporal left, Marcus grabbed my arm. His fingers dug into my flesh, his face contorted with frustration. You're not going anywhere until we settle this. Your mother needs you home. I looked down at his hand, then back to his face. Remove your hand, Marcus. Or what? He challenged. You'll call your military friends? Have me escorted out? I'm trying to help you, Elara. This playing soldier, playing doctor, it's gone on long enough. It's time to come home and get a real job. The intercom crackled. Admiral Reed 2 or 1. Incoming critical. I tried to pull away, but his grip tightened. Marcus, I have patients coming in. Lives depend on me being in that or. Lives. Have always depended on you, haven't they? His voice dripped with sarcasm. Always the hero, just like him. Your mother has been home alone, planning a surgery you don't even care about, while you're out here playing war. The sound of helicopter. Rotors grew louder outside. More wounded arriving. I needed to go. Last chance, Marcus. Let go of my arm. His grip only tightened. Not until you agree to come home. I've chartered a plane. We leave tonight. What happened next occurred so quickly I barely registered it. Marcus pulled a zip tie from his pocket and secured it around my wrist before I could react. The other end he quickly attached to the metal radiator pipe running along the wall. What the hell are you doing? I demanded, tugging against the restraint. Making you listen for once. His voice was cold, determined. You'll stay here until you agree to come home where you belong. I've indulged this military fantasy of yours long enough. Your mother needs you. I stared at him in disbelief. You've lost your mind. Release me now. No. He straightened his tie, looking down at me with that familiar mixture of disappointment and disdain. You can shout all you want. I've told your commander that we're having a family discussion and not to be disturbed. We'll leave when you've come to your senses. The intercom sounded again. Admiral Reed, status update requested. Critical patients arriving now. I pulled against the zip tie, feeling it cut into my skin. People will die if I'm not in that or, Marcus. Is that what you want? Always so dramatic, he repeated, checking his watch. There are other doctors here. The world won't end because you're not playing hero for a few hours. I could hear the commotion outside the door now. The wounded being rushed in, medical personnel calling orders. And here I was, restrained by my own stepfather in some twisted power play. My father would be disgusted by you right now, I said quietly. His face flushed with anger. Your father was a fool who got himself killed playing hero. And you're following right in his footsteps. The door burst open again. This time it wasn't a nervous corporal but Commander Hargrove, his face a mask of controlled fury. Admiral Reed is needed in surgery immediately, he said, his eyes taking in the scene, me restrained, Marcus standing over me. Marcus turned, his arrogance undiminished. We're in the middle of a family matter. Please leave us. Hargrove's gaze hardened. Sir, I don't think you understand. 3 Marines are currently bleeding out in my ORs, and the only surgeon qualified to save them is the woman you've just restrained. She's not going anywhere, Marcus said firmly. Her mother needs her at home. The Navy has taken enough from our family. I met Hargrove's eyes. Get me scissors or a knife. Now. He nodded once and disappeared. Marcus began to pace, his confidence wavering slightly in the face of Hargrove's reaction. This is absurd, he muttered. They treat you like some kind of savior. Don't they understand you're just a girl playing at being important? The words stung, as they always had. The same dismissal I'd heard since my father died and Marcus entered our lives. The constant belittling of my achievements, the undermining of my confidence, the subtle and not so subtle suggestions that I was somehow less than. The door opened again, and Hargrove returned. But he wasn't alone. 5 men in full dress uniforms filed in behind him, their faces grave. I recognized them. Immediately, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the highest-ranking military officers in the country. And behind them, a face I knew well, Admiral Jackson, head of Naval operations. Marcus turned, his expression shifting from annoyance to confusion. "What is this?" Admiral Jackson stepped forward, his eyes taking in the zip tie around my wrist. Without a word, he pulled out a pocketknife and cut me free. "Admiral Reed," he said formally, "you're needed in surgery." I stood, rubbing my wrist where the plastic had cut into it. "Thank you, sir." As I moved toward the door, Marcus stepped in front of me. "What is going on here? Who are these people?" Admiral Jackson regarded Marcus with cold contempt. "Mr. Reed, do you understand what you've done? You've just restrained a flag officer of the United States Navy during a mass casualty event in a combat zone." Marcus faltered, looking from Jackson to the other generals, finally registering the stars on their shoulders. "She's my stepdaughter. We're having a family discussion." "She is Admiral Elara Reed," corrected one of the generals, his voice sharp. "The youngest admiral in naval history and the head of combat surgical operations for this entire theater. And you just interfered with her duty during a critical situation." The color drained from Marcus's face as he finally understood the gravity of what he'd done. He looked at me, really looked at me perhaps for the first time, seeing not the 12-year-old girl he'd married into, but the woman I'd become. "I didn't. I was just trying to get her home to her mother," he stammered. Admiral Jackson's expression remained unyielding. "Commander Hargrove, please escort Mr. Reed to the security office. He'll need to make a statement before he's escorted off the base." Marcus's eyes widened. "You can't do this. I'm a civilian. I have rights. In a combat zone, interfering with military operations has consequences," Jackson replied evenly. "You're lucky we're not pressing charges." As security arrived to escort Marcus away, he looked back at me one last time. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something I'd never seen on his face before, uncertainty. "Elara, tell them. Tell them I'm your father." I met his gaze steadily. "You never were." I turned away, already refocusing on the task ahead. "Commander Hargrove, status on the incoming wounded?" "3 critical, or prepped and waiting," he replied, falling into step beside me. As we walked briskly toward the operating room, leaving Marcus and the generals behind, Hargrove spoke quietly. "I've never seen the Joint Chiefs mobilize like that. They were here for the strategy briefing when they heard what happened." I nodded, already mentally preparing for surgery. "The timing was fortunate." "It wasn't just timing," he said. "They came because it was you." I paused at the door to the scrub room, the sounds of medical equipment and urgent voices filtering through from the or beyond. "What do you mean?" Hargrove's expression was somber. "Admiral Jackson told me your father saved his life in Fallujah. Said he'd promised to look out for you." The mention of my father sent a wave of emotion through me that I quickly suppressed. There would be time for that later. Now, there were lives to save. "Let's get to work," I said, pushing through the door. The next 12 hours were a blur of surgeries, one after another. Blood and tissue and the fight to save lives that hung by increasingly fragile threads. I moved from one or to the next, making decisions, performing procedures, directing my team with the calm authority that had become my hallmark. It was nearly dawn when I finally stepped out of the last surgery, exhaustion weighing on me like a physical burden. All 3 Marines would live, though one would likely lose his leg. A victory, by the standards of combat medicine. I made my way to my small office, closing the door behind me. Only then did I allow myself to sink into my chair, the events of the day crashing over me. The confrontation with Marcus, the humiliation of being restrained, the intervention of the Joint Chiefs, it all seemed surreal now in the quiet aftermath. My phone buzzed on the desk. My mother. I hesitated, then answered. "Hey, Mom." Elara, her voice was warm, concerned. "Are you alright?" "Marcus just called me, sounding upset. He said there was some kind of incident?" I closed my eyes, considering how much to tell her. "We had a disagreement. It's fine now. He said he went there to bring you home for my surgery." "Honey, I told him not to do that. My procedure isn't for 2 weeks, and it's just routine." The confirmation of what I'd suspected, that Marcus had lied, didn't surprise me. "I know, Mom. We talked yesterday, remember?" She sighed, the sound tinny through the satellite connection. "He means well, Elara. He just doesn't understand your world." "No, he doesn't," I agreed, too tired to argue about Marcus's intentions. "How are you feeling about the surgery?" "I'm fine. Stop worrying about me." There was a pause. "Your father would be so proud of you, honey. So proud." The mention of my father, coming so soon after Hargrove's revelation, made my throat tighten. "I hope so. I know so. I should go. Marcus just got home and he looks upset." "I love you. sweetheart. Love you too, Mom. The call ended, leaving me in silence again. I leaned back in my chair, letting exhaustion wash over me. A knock at the door roused me from near sleep. Enter, I called, straightening in my chair. Admiral Jackson stepped in, still in his dress uniform despite the early hour. He looked as tired as I felt. Admiral Reed, he greeted me formally. May I sit? I nodded, suddenly acutely aware of my blood-stained scrubs and disheveled appearance. Of course, sir. He settled into the chair across from me, his expression softening slightly. All three made it, I hear. Yes, sir. They'll recover. He nodded, seemingly satisfied. Then, after a moment of silence, your father would be proud. The words, so similar to my mother's, hit differently coming from this man who had known my father as a fellow soldier rather than a husband. Commander. Hargrove mentioned you knew him, I said carefully. Jackson's eyes grew distant. He pulled me out of a burning Humvee in Fallujah. Carried me 2 miles to the extraction point with a bullet in his own leg. He paused. He talked about you the whole way. His brilliant daughter who wanted to be a doctor. I swallowed hard, unprepared for this glimpse of my father's last years. Thank you for telling me that. When I heard his daughter had not only become a doctor but was rising through the ranks, I kept tabs on your career. A slight smile crossed his weathered face. Not that you needed any help. Your record speaks for itself. I wasn't sure how to respond, so I simply nodded. Jackson stood, straightening his uniform. Your stepfather has been escorted off base. He won't be allowed back without proper clearance and supervision. Thank you, sir. He moved toward the door, then paused. The incident report will note that he interfered with medical operations during a critical situation. Nothing more. No need to complicate your family dynamics further. The kindness in this gesture surprised me. I appreciate that, sir. He nodded once, then left, closing the door softly behind him. I sat alone in the quiet of my office as dawn broke over the desert beyond my window. The confrontation with Marcus had been building for years, his resentment of my career, his dismissal of my achievements, his constant comparison to my father. Perhaps now, finally, he would see me for who I was rather than who he wanted me to be. A text message from my mother lit up my phone screen. Whatever happened with Marcus, I'm on your side. Always have been. Love you. I smiled, feeling a weight lift slightly. Tomorrow would bring more surgeries, more decisions, more lives in my hands. But for now, in this moment of quiet, I allowed myself to feel the satisfaction of standing my ground, of being recognized not as someone's daughter or stepdaughter, but as the person I had worked so hard to become. Admiral Elara Reed. My father's daughter, yes. But more importantly, my own woman. The dust storm came without warning, painting the sky the color of dried blood. I finished my rounds in the recovery ward, checking on Lieutenant Chen, whose eyes fluttered open as I adjusted his Admiral, he whispered, voice raw from the intubation tube. Rest, Lieutenant, I said, checking his monitors. You've earned it. He caught my wrist with surprising strength. They said you operated for 8 hours straight. That you wouldn't leave even when your family came. I smiled, gently removing his hand. Just doing my job. No, ma'am. His eyes, still clouded with medication, held mine. That's not just a job. Outside the recovery ward, the hallway bustled with activity. Medical personnel moved with purpose, the organized chaos of a combat hospital functioning despite the storm raging outside. Sand whispered against the windows, carried by winds strong enough to ground all aircraft. Commander Hargrove intercepted me as I headed toward my office. Admiral, you've been on duty for 36 hours. You need to rest. I'll rest when the storm breaks and we can evac these patients, I replied, accepting the coffee he offered. The meteorologists say that could be another 12 hours. He fell into step beside me. And with all due respect, you're no good to anyone if you collapse. I sipped the coffee, grimacing at the bitter taste. 4 hours. I'll take 4 hours. Once I check on the new admissions. Before he could argue, my satellite phone rang. I recognized the number immediately and hesitated. Take it, Hargrove said quietly. I'll handle the new cases. I nodded gratefully and ducked into a nearby supply closet for privacy. Hello, Mom. Elara. Her voice sounded tired, stretched thin across the thousands of miles between us. I just wanted to check on you. After what happened with Marcus. I leaned against the shelves, the familiar weight of medical supplies at my back. I'm fine. How are you doing? Don't worry about me. A pause. He's been drinking since he got back. Keeps muttering about generals and admirals and how they humiliated him. I closed my eyes, feeling the beginnings of a headache. Mom, no, listen to me. Her voice grew stronger. I need you to know something. I've let him control too much. Dictate too many terms. That ends now. The declaration surprised me. My mother had always been the peacemaker, smoothing Marcus's rough edges, making excuses for his behavior. What do you mean? I mean I'm done letting him speak for me. Done letting him use my illness as a weapon against you. She took a breath. He's never understood what drives you. What drove your father. But I do. I swallowed hard, unprepared for this conversation after so many hours without sleep. Mom, you don't have to. Yes, I do. I should have done this years ago. Her voice cracked slightly. Your father would be so proud of the woman you've become. And so am I. The words hit me harder than I expected, breaking through defenses. Worn thin by exhaustion and stress. I pressed my palm against my eyes, fighting back unexpected tears. Thank you, I managed. I've got to go. Marcus is coming. Her voice dropped. Be safe, sweetheart. And know that whatever happens here, I'm handling it. You focus on your patients. The call ended, leaving me alone in the supply closet with questions I couldn't answer and a growing sense of unease. What did she mean, whatever happens here? I stepped back into the hallway, composing myself as a nurse hurried toward me. Admiral, we've got an urgent case in Bay 3. Civilian contractor, crush injury to the chest. I pushed my personal concerns aside, focusing on the immediate need. On my way. The next few hours blurred together. The contractor's injuries were severe but survivable with proper intervention. I worked methodically, my hands steady despite my exhaustion, closing the final sutures as the anesthesiologist reported stable vitals. Good work, everyone, I said, stepping back from the table. Keep him sedated and monitor for compartment syndrome. As I left the OR, the storm outside had intensified. Sand pelted the windows, the wind howling around the corners of the building. I made my way to my quarters, the promise of 4 hours sleep pulling me forward like a physical force. I had just closed my door when another knock came. Stifling a groan, I opened it to find a young private standing there, looking nervous. Admiral Reed, ma'am. There's a call for you in the command center. They said it's urgent. I followed him through the quiet corridors, the skeleton night crew nodding respectfully as I passed. In the command center, a communications officer handed me a secure phone. Admiral Reed, I answered, fighting to keep the exhaustion from my voice. Admiral. The voice belonged to General Williams, one of the Joint Chiefs who had witnessed Marcus's behavior. We have a situation that requires your immediate attention. I straightened, suddenly alert. What kind of situation, sir? Your stepfather has been making some concerning claims to the press. Allegations about preferential treatment, about your qualifications. My stomach tightened. What specifically, sir? He's claiming your promotion to Admiral was politically motivated. That you lack the necessary experience and judgment for the position. He paused. And he's suggesting that yesterday's incident was evidence of that. The headache that had been threatening now bloomed fully behind my eyes. I see. Normally, we wouldn't concern ourselves with a civilian's ranting, Williams continued. But he's gained some traction. A few news outlets have picked up the story. Given your position and the sensitive nature of the operations there, we felt you should be informed. Thank you, sir. I kept my voice neutral, professional. How would you like me to proceed? For now, continue your duties. We're handling it from our end. Your record speaks for itself, Admiral Reed. After the call ended, I stood motionless. In the command center, processing this new development. Marcus had always undermined me in private, but taking it public was a new level of betrayal. Admiral? The communications officer's voice broke through my thoughts. Is everything all right? I nodded once, decisive. Yes. Thank you, Lieutenant. Instead of heading to my quarters, I made my way to the small gym facility. Sleep would be impossible now, my mind racing with implications and contingencies. Better to work through the physical exhaustion first. The gym was empty at this hour. I changed quickly and began a punishing routine on the treadmill, pushing my body as if I could outrun the complications Marcus had created. With each step, I felt anger building, at him, at the situation, at myself for still being affected by his disapproval after all these years. Thought I'd find you here. I turned to see Commander Hargrove entering the gym, a knowing look on his face. News travels fast, I observed, not slowing my pace. Only the important kind. He leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Want to talk about it? Not particularly. He nodded, accepting this. Then how about I spot you for some weights instead? I allowed a small smile. That I'll take you up on. For the next hour, we worked in companionable silence, the physical exertion bleeding away some of the tension that had knotted between my shoulders. Hargrove knew when to push and when to step back, a quality that made him an excellent second-in-command. Finally, exhaustion won out. I sat on a bench, toweling sweat from my face as Hargrove handed me a bottle of water. He's been doing this since I was 12, I said quietly, surprising myself by breaking the silence. Undermining me. Making me question my own abilities. My father had been dead less than a year when my mother married him. Hargrove sat beside me, his presence solid and reassuring. Some men are threatened by strong women. Especially ones who remind them of men they couldn't measure up to. I took a long drink of water, considering his words. My father cast a long shadow. Marcus never served, but he always had plenty to say about those who did. Especially my father. And you? Followed in his footsteps anyway. Not exactly. I stood, stretching muscles that protested the movement. My father was infantry. I chose medicine first. The military came second. But you excelled at both, Hargrove pointed out. Youngest trauma surgeon in the Navy. Fastest promotion to Admiral in modern history. I shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. Right place, right time. Bullshit. The word was so unexpected coming from the usually proper commander that I nearly laughed. I've served under you for 3 years, Elara. I've seen you perform surgeries that would make most doctors pass out. I've watched you make impossible decisions under fire, literally. That's not luck or timing. That's who you are. His use of my first name wasn't lost on me. In that moment, we weren't Admiral and Commander, but two people who had seen the worst humanity could offer and still chose to stand in the breach. Thank you, James, I said softly. He nodded once, then glanced at his watch. You've still got 2 hours before your next shift. Use them wisely. I returned to my quarters, showered quickly, and collapsed onto my narrow bed. Despite the turmoil of the day, sleep claimed me almost instantly, a dreamless void that offered temporary respite. The alarm seemed to sound mere minutes later. I dressed mechanically, my body protesting every movement after the brief rest. As I stepped into the corridor, my satellite phone buzzed again. Unknown number this time. Admiral Reed, I answered, making my way toward the mess hall. Admiral, this is Sophia Chen from the Washington Post. The voice was professional, measured. I was hoping to get your comment on the allegations made by your stepfather, Marcus Reed. I stopped walking, suddenly alert. I'm afraid I'm not authorized to speak to the press from my current position, Ms. Chen. I understand, but these allegations speak directly to your qualifications and fitness for command. Don't you think the public deserves to hear your side? I think my record speaks for itself, I replied evenly. Now if you'll excuse me, I have patients waiting. Just one more question, Admiral. Is it true that you were restrained during a critical medical situation because you were emotionally compromised? The deliberate mischaracterization of events made my blood boil, but I kept my voice steady. No, Ms. Chen, that is categorically false. Good day. I ended the call, my appetite gone. More calls would follow, I knew. Marcus had opened a floodgate that wouldn't easily be closed. In the mess hall, conversations quieted as I entered. Eyes followed me, quickly averted when I looked in their direction. News really did travel fast, especially in a closed environment like a forward operating base. I grabbed coffee and sat alone, reviewing patient files on my tablet. Focusing on medicine was easier than dwelling on the brewing storm Marcus had created. I was halfway through my coffee when Admiral Jackson appeared, looking grim. Walk with me, Admiral Reed, he said without preamble. Outside, the dust storm had finally abated, leaving the world coated in a fine layer of sand. The morning sun cast long shadows across the compound as we walked in silence toward the administrative building. The situation has escalated, Jackson said finally. Your stepfather gave an interview to a major network. It's airing stateside this morning. I kept my eyes forward, my pace steady. What's our response, sir? That's what we need to discuss. He stopped, turning to face me. The Joint Chiefs are divided. Some feel we should issue a formal statement defending your record and qualifications. Others believe engaging at all lends credibility to his claims. And what do you think, sir? Jackson's weathered face showed a flicker of something, sympathy, perhaps, or resolve. I think you've earned the right to decide how we proceed. The weight of this decision settled on my shoulders. My personal instinct was to ignore Marcus, to rise above his petty attempts to diminish me. But this wasn't just about me anymore. It affected the chain of command, the confidence of those serving under me, potentially even patient care. I need to see the interview, I said finally. Jackson nodded. It's been made available in the secure communications room. The room was small, designed for classified video conferences rather than television viewing. A junior officer set up the recording, then excused himself, leaving me alone with Admiral Jackson. The interview began with the host introducing Marcus as the stepfather of controversial Admiral Elara Reed. Marcus looked composed, concerned, playing the role of worried parent perfectly. I've watched her struggle with the pressures of military life for years, he was saying, his expression grave. Elara is brilliant, don't misunderstand me. But the responsibilities of command require more than intelligence. They require judgment, emotional stability, qualities that I fear she hasn't fully developed. The host leaned forward. Strong accusations, Mr. Reed. Can you elaborate? Marcus nodded soberly. Just days ago, I witnessed her lose control during a medical emergency. She became so fixated on a single patient that she refused to delegate, refused to follow proper protocols. When I attempted to intervene, for her own good, mind you, she became combative. And this was during active military operations? Yes. Lives were at stake. I had to physically restrain her until proper authorities could arrive. The blatant lies made my jaw clench, but I forced myself to watch the entire interview, to understand exactly what I was facing. Marcus painted himself as the concerned parent, me as the unstable officer promoted beyond my capabilities due to political correctness and my father's legacy. When it ended, I sat in silence, processing the calculated attack. Jackson watched me, his expression unreadable. He's manipulated the truth completely, I said finally. Twisted everything that happened. Jackson nodded. Yes, he has. And unfortunately, it's gaining traction. There are already calls for an investigation into your promotion and command decisions. I stood, pacing the small room. An investigation doesn't concern me. My record is clean. It's not just about the facts, Admiral. It's about perception, morale, confidence in leadership. I stopped pacing, meeting his gaze directly. What would you do, sir? If it were your family spreading these lies? Jackson considered this, his eyes distant. When I was coming up through the ranks, my brother did something similar. Jealousy, I suppose. Told anyone who would listen that I'd cheated my way through the Naval Academy. This personal revelation surprised me. How did you handle it? Poorly, at first. Got angry. Confrontational. A small smile crossed his face. Then my commanding officer gave me some advice I never forgot. He said, Jackson, you can spend your energy fighting lies, or you can spend it proving them wrong. You don't have enough for both. The wisdom in those words resonated with me. I straightened, decision made. I won't dignify his claims with a response. But I won't hide either. I'll continue performing my duties exactly as I have been. Let my actions speak for themselves. Jackson nodded, approval evident in his expression. I believe that's the right call, Admiral. In the meantime, we'll handle the political side from Washington. As we left the communications room, I felt a strange sense of calm. Marcus had escalated his lifelong campaign against me to a national stage, but for the first time, I wasn't fighting this battle alone. I had earned my place, earned the respect of those whose opinions actually mattered. Outside, the base was coming fully to life. Personnel moved with purpose, vehicles rumbled between buildings, a medevac helicopter approached in the distance. Life continued, patients needed care, and that was where my focus belonged. Admiral Reed. A corpsman jogged toward me, datapad in hand. The dust storm delayed 3 critical transfers from the forward aid station. ETA 10 minutes. Prep. Or 2 and 3, I replied, already mentally shifting to surgeon mode. Alert the blood bank, will need additional units. As the corpsman hurried away, Jackson regarded me with quiet approval. Go save lives, Admiral. That's the best response you can give. I nodded once, then headed toward the hospital building, leaving thoughts of Marcus and his machinations behind. The work ahead was what mattered, the lives in my hands, the oath I had taken, the legacy I was building with each patient saved. The legacy not of my father's daughter, but of Admiral Elara Reed. The medevac landed in a swirl of dust and urgency. I stood ready as the doors opened, revealing 3 stretchers. The paramedics moved with practiced efficiency, calling out vitals and injuries as they transferred the wounded to waiting gurneys. 25-year-old male, penetrating trauma to the chest and abdomen, BP 90/60ths and dropping, reported the first medic, pushing past me toward the trauma bay. I fell into step beside the second stretcher. Status? Female civilian contractor, caught in an IED blast. Multiple fragment wounds, potential spinal involvement. She's been in and out of consciousness. I nodded, already assessing the visible injuries. Take her to or 2. I'll take primary. The woman's eyes fluttered open as we transferred her to the operating table. Fear clouded her gaze, her hand shooting out to grab my arm. Am I going to die? She whispered, her voice barely audible over the equipment being prepared around us. I held her gaze steadily. Not today. I won't let that happen. Something in my tone must have reassured her. She relaxed slightly, nodding once before the anesthesia took her under. For the next 6 hours, I existed purely in the realm of medicine. Blood and tissue, damaged organs and severed vessels, problems with solutions, challenges to overcome through skill and knowledge. Here, Marcus's accusations couldn't reach me. Here, I was defined solely by what my hands could do, what my mind could solve. When I finally stepped back from the table, the contractor's wounds repaired and her vitals stable, a peculiar peace had settled over me. Let Marcus say what he would. This saving of lives, was the truth of who I was. Commander Hargrove was waiting when I emerged from the OR. All 3 pulled through, he reported. The male patient is critical but stable. Good work, I said, rolling my shoulders to release some of the tension. What's next? He hesitated. There's a video call for you. From Washington. The peace I'd found in surgery began to evaporate. The Joint Chiefs? No. Your mother. I froze, surprised. My mother rarely used video calls, preferring the simplicity of voice communication. Is she all right? She seemed determined, Hargrove replied carefully. She's waiting in the secure communications room. I made my way there quickly, concern growing with each step. My mother's health had been fragile since her first cancer diagnosis 3 years ago. The upcoming surgery, while routine, still carried risks given her history. The screen flickered to life as I entered, revealing my mother's face. She looked tired but resolute, her silver-streaked hair pulled back neatly. Mom, I greeted her, settling into the chair. Is everything okay? No, Elara, it's not. Her voice was stronger than I expected. I've seen what Marcus is doing. The interviews, the allegations. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. You don't need to worry about that. I'm handling it. I'm not calling because I'm worried about you. A small smile curved her lips. I'm calling because I've decided to handle Marcus. Something in her tone made me pause. What do you mean? I mean I've filed for divorce. She said it simply, as if commenting on the weather. And I've scheduled a press conference for tomorrow morning. I stared at the screen, processing her words. Mom, you don't have to. Yes, I do. Her eyes, so like my own, held a determination I hadn't seen in years. I've stood by too long while he tore you down. While he tried to dim your light because he couldn't stand to see you shine. That ends now. The emotion in her voice made my throat tighten. This will be hard for you. The press, the questions. Your health, my health is my concern, she interrupted gently. And some things are worth fighting for, even when it's hard. You taught me that, Elara. You and your father both. In that moment, I saw my mother clearly, perhaps for the first time in years. Not as the quiet peacemaker I'd always known, but as the woman who had fallen in love with a soldier, who had raised a daughter alone during deployments, who had found her own kind of strength in silence. I love you, Mom, I said simply. I love you too. Her smile widened. Now go do what you do best. I'll handle things here. As the screen went dark, I sat motionless, absorbing this unexpected turn of events. My mother had made her choice, not between Marcus and me, but between truth and lies. Between standing by and standing up. Perhaps that was the real legacy of our family. Not military service or medical skill, but the courage to face difficult truths and act on them, regardless of the cost. Outside the communications room, the base continued its rhythmic activity, oblivious to the personal revelations occurring within its walls. I stepped back into that flow, back into the role of Admiral Reed, carrying with me a newfound understanding of where my strength truly came from. It wasn't just my father's daughter who wore these stars. It was my mother's as well. The morning sun cast long shadows across the base as I stood on the rooftop of the hospital building, watching the orange glow spread across the desert landscape. Below, medical personnel changed shifts, vehicles moved with purpose, and the steady rhythm of military life continued despite the personal storm I found myself in. My satellite phone sat heavy in my pocket, a reminder of the press conference my mother would be giving in just a few hours. Beautiful, isn't it? Admiral Jackson's voice came from behind me. The desert at dawn. I turned, offering a small nod of acknowledgement. One of the few perks of this posting. He joined me at the railing, his weathered hands resting lightly on the metal. I received word from Washington. Your mother's press conference has the Pentagon's full support. The news surprised me. That's unusual protocol. Jackson's smile was slight but genuine. So is having an Admiral's stepfather go rogue on national television. These are unusual times. We stood in companionable silence, watching the day take shape below us. The weight of command sat differently on my shoulders this morning, not Lighter, exactly, but more balanced, distributed across a foundation of support I hadn't fully appreciated until now. I've been thinking about what you said, I admitted finally. About choosing between fighting lies and proving them wrong. Jackson nodded, encouraging me to continue. I'd like to return to surgery today. Full schedule. The most critical cases. We have. You have nothing to prove, Admiral Reed. Not to you, perhaps. I met his gaze directly. But to everyone watching this situation unfold, to every young woman in uniform who might see herself in this story someday, I want to show them how we respond to attempts to diminish us. Jackson considered this, then straightened, his posture shifting subtly from casual to official. Very well, Admiral. I'll make the arrangements. As he turned to leave, I spoke again. Sir? Thank you. For everything. He paused, looking back. With unexpected warmth. Your father would be proud. But more importantly, I hope you are. The words stayed with me as I made my way to the hospital wing. Pride had always been a complicated concept in my life, too often conflated with arrogance. Too frequently denied in the pursuit of humility. But standing here now, in the uniform I'd earned, with the skills I'd honed through years of relentless study and practice, perhaps pride was exactly what I should feel. The hospital was already bustling when I arrived. Commander Hargrove intercepted me near the entrance, data pad in hand. Admiral, we've got 4 critical surgeries scheduled, plus whatever comes in from the field. Are you sure about this? Completely, I replied, taking the data pad and reviewing the cases. I'll take the spinal injury first, then the arterial repair. Hargrove fell into step beside me. The press has been calling all morning. Requesting interviews, statements. Even asking to send photographers. Denied across the board, I said. Firmly. This is a medical facility, not a circus. Yes, ma'am. He hesitated, then added, the staff wanted you to know, they're with you. Every one of them. I glanced around the corridor, noting the determined focus on each face I passed. Some offered nods, others small salutes, all conveying the same message, solidarity. Let's show them what this team can do, I said, straightening my shoulders as I pushed through the doors to the surgical ward. The first operation was complex, a civilian contractor with spinal fragment injuries from an IED blast. The damage was extensive, requiring meticulous work to remove shrapnel without causing further nerve injury. I worked steadily, each movement precise, each decision calculated. For hours later, I stepped back from the table, allowing myself a small moment of satisfaction as the final scans showed successful decompression of the spinal cord. She'll walk again, I confirmed to the surgical team. Good work, everyone. As I prepared for the next surgery, my satellite phone buzzed. A text message from Admiral Jackson, press conference starting. Available in command center if you wish to view. I considered ignoring it, focusing solely on the work ahead. But this was part of the battle too, facing truth directly, not hiding from it. Prep the arterial case, I instructed the surgical team. I'll be back in 15. The command center was quiet, a few officers watching the screen with studied neutrality. They straightened as I entered, but I waved away the formality. At ease. I'm just here to watch. On screen, my mother was being seated at a table, microphones arranged before her. She looked composed, dignified in a simple blue suit, her silver-streaked hair framing a face that showed both vulnerability and determination. Thank you all for coming, she began, her voice steady. My name is Catherine Reed. I am the mother of Admiral Elara Reed and, for the past 18 years, the wife of Marcus Reed. She paused, taking a measured breath. Yesterday, my husband appeared on national television making claims about my daughter's qualifications, mental stability, and fitness for command. Today, I am here to set the record straight. The camera panned across the assembled press, their expressions ranging from skepticism to curiosity. My mother continued, her gaze direct. I have remained silent for too many years while Marcus undermined, criticized, and belittled my daughter's achievements. That silence ends today. She opened a folder before her, removing a document. I have here Elara's complete service record, which the Navy has graciously allowed me to share with you all. It details a career of extraordinary achievement, unparalleled dedication, and service that would make any parent proud. She proceeded to outline my career with precision, the accelerated medical training, the combat deployments, the field innovations that had saved hundreds of lives, the commendations and awards that had led to my rapid promotion. Each of these achievements was earned through merit, intelligence, and unwavering commitment, she emphasized. Not through favoritism, not through my late husband's legacy, but through Elara's own exceptional abilities. A reporter raised a hand. Mrs. Reed, your husband claimed that Admiral Reed became emotionally unstable during a recent medical emergency. Can you address that? My mother's expression hardened slightly. What my husband witnessed, and grossly mischaracterized, was my daughter's dedication to saving lives. While performing emergency surgery, she was forcibly restrained by Marcus, who had entered a sterile operating room without authorization and attempted to remove her from her duty, because he wanted her to attend to personal matters at home. Murmurs spread through the press corps. Another reporter spoke up. Are you saying Mr. Reed lied about what happened? I am saying, my mother replied carefully, that Marcus has never understood or respected military service. He has spent years attempting to convince Elara to abandon her calling, to pursue what he considers a real career. When those private efforts failed, he chose to take his campaign public. She straightened in her chair, a subtle but unmistakable gesture of resolve. As of yesterday, I have filed for divorce from Marcus Reed. I cannot remain married to a man who would so deliberately damage my daughter's reputation and undermine the critical work she does saving lives in a combat zone. The reporters erupted with questions, but my mother raised a hand for silence. One final statement. To the men and women serving under my daughter's command, you are in the most capable hands imaginable. And to those who would question whether a woman can lead effectively in combat medicine, Admiral Reed's record speaks for itself. Her gender is irrelevant to her excellence. I stepped back from the screen, a complex mixture of emotions washing over me: pride in my mother's courage, gratitude for her support, and a renewed determination to live up to the faith she had placed in me. Admiral? A young lieutenant stood in the doorway. They're ready for you in or one. I nodded, pushing personal feelings aside as I refocused on the work ahead. Let's go. The arterial repair was challenging, requiring all my concentration. By the time I completed it successfully, 3 more hours had passed. I moved directly to the next case, then the next, working steadily through the day without pause. It was evening when I finally finished, stepping out of the OR after nearly 12 consecutive hours of surgery. Exhaustion pulled at me, but it was the clean fatigue of work well done, of lives saved, of purpose fulfilled. Commander Hargrove was waiting with a cup of coffee and a protein bar. For critical surgeries, all successful. Plus 2 emergency procedures you weren't even scheduled for. He handed me the coffee. Quite a statement, Admiral. I accepted the coffee gratefully. Not a statement. Just my job. The video of your mother's press conference has gone viral, he continued, falling into step beside me as we walked toward my office. The Pentagon has issued a formal statement supporting her account and reaffirming confidence in your command. I sipped the coffee, letting the bitter warmth revive me slightly. And Marcus? Gone quiet. His last interview has been pulled from several networks' websites. Hargrove's expression was carefully neutral, but satisfaction gleamed in his eyes. Apparently, questioning the qualifications of one of the most decorated combat surgeons in naval history wasn't the public relations win he anticipated. In my office, I sank into the chair, allowing myself to feel the full weight of fatigue. On my desk sat a small framed photo, my father in his uniform, arm around my mother, a younger me between them. I had carried it with me through every deployment. A reminder of where I came from and why I served. My satellite phone rang, my mother's number. I answered immediately. Mom? It's done, she said simply. I've said what needed to be said. You were incredible, I told her, meaning it completely. But this will make things difficult for you. The press, the attention, I've lived in silence long enough, she interrupted gently. It's surprisingly freeing to speak the truth aloud. We talked for a few minutes more, about her upcoming surgery, about the divorce proceedings, about the unexpected support she'd received from my father's old military colleagues. As we spoke, I heard a strength in her voice that had been missing for years, as if standing up to Marcus had restored something vital within her. After we hung up, I leaned back in my chair, contemplating the journey that had brought me here. From the 12-year-old girl devastated by her father's death to the surgeon and admiral I had become, it was a path marked by challenge and determination, by setbacks and triumphs. Marcus had tried to derail that journey from the beginning. But in the end, his efforts had only served to highlight the strength he had tried to deny. A knock at my door roused me from reflection. Admiral Jackson entered, followed by the 5 generals who had witnessed Marcus's behavior days earlier. Admiral Reed, Jackson said formally. We've received word from the Pentagon. In light of recent events, they're accelerating the timeline for Operation Healing Hand. I straightened, instantly alert despite my exhaustion. Operation Healing Hand was a major humanitarian initiative I had helped design, a coordinated effort to provide advanced medical care in conflict zones while training local doctors in trauma techniques. The new timeline? I asked. They want to launch next month, with you as operational commander." Jackson's expression was carefully neutral, but approval showed in his eyes. "The Secretary believes this is an opportune moment to demonstrate American medical expertise in the region, and to showcase the leadership capabilities of one of our most qualified officers." I understood the subtext immediately. The Pentagon was offering not just an opportunity but a vindication, a very public vote of confidence in my abilities. "I'll need to review the logistics, sir. Ensure we're properly prepared for an accelerated deployment." Jackson nodded. "The Joint Chiefs have authorized whatever resources you require. This operation has been designated top priority." After they left, I sat alone in my office, considering the implications. What Marcus had intended as a career-ending attack had instead catapulted me into a position of even greater responsibility and visibility. The irony wasn't lost on me. My phone buzzed with a text from Commander Hargrove. "Dinner in the mess? You've been operating all day." I smiled slightly, appreciating his concern. "On my way," I replied. The mess hall was relatively quiet at this hour, most personnel having already eaten. I filled a tray with whatever looked most edible and joined Hargrove at a corner table. "The rumor mill is already churning about Operation Healing Hand," he said without preamble. "The medical staff is excited. They know what this could mean for combat medicine going forward." I nodded, too tired for extensive conversation. We ate in companionable silence for a few minutes before Hargrove spoke. Again. "When I was in medical school, we studied your techniques," he admitted. "The Reed method for field vascular repair. I had no idea when I was assigned to your command that I'd be working with the woman who had revolutionized trauma surgery in combat zones. The revelation surprised me." "They teach that? In every military medical program." He smiled slightly. "Your legacy was secure long before any of this happened with your stepfather. He just didn't know it." The thought was oddly comforting, that while Marcus had been working to tear me down, I had been building something lasting, something that would continue saving lives long after both of us were gone. "Thank you, James," I said quietly, "for everything these past few days." He nodded, understanding in his eyes. "That's what friends do. Even in the chain of command." After dinner, I made my rounds, checking on the patients I'd operated on throughout the day. Each was stable, each represented a life that might have been lost without the team's intervention. This was the true measure of success, not rank or recognition, but lives preserved, futures restored. In the recovery ward, the young Marine I'd operated on first was awake, his eyes clear as I checked his surgical site. "Admiral Reed," he greeted me, voice still rough from intubation. "How's the pain, Corporal?" I asked, examining the monitors. "Manageable, ma'am." He hesitated, then added, "We heard about what happened with your stepfather." I kept my expression neutral. "Focus on your recovery, Corporal. That's an order." "Yes, ma'am." But he continued, something important clearly on his mind. "My sister wants to be a doctor. Combat medicine, like you. Our parents told her it wasn't a place for women." I met his gaze, sensing where this was going. "And what do you think, Corporal?" "I think," he said slowly, "that when I got hit, I didn't care if the hand saving me belonged to a man or a woman. I just wanted the best surgeon available." He swallowed. "That was you, ma'am. And I'm going to make sure my sister knows that when she gets those doubts." The simple truth of his words struck deeper than any formal commendation. This was why I served, not for rank or recognition, but for moments like this, when the work spoke for itself. "What's your sister's name?" I asked. "Maya, ma'am. She's 16. I nodded once, decision made. "When you're recovered enough for video calls, arrange one with her. I'd like to speak with her directly." His eyes widened slightly. "Really, ma'am?" "Really, Corporal. The military needs good doctors. And from what I've seen, determination runs in your family." As I left the recovery ward, the weight of the past few days seemed to lift slightly. Marcus's attack had been personal, designed to undermine not just my career but my sense of self-worth. Yet in its wake, I found myself surrounded by unexpected support, by people who saw my value not because of my gender or my father's legacy, but because of the work I did, the lives I saved, the example I set. Outside, the desert night had fallen, stars scattered across the vast darkness above. I stood for a moment, breathing in the cool air, letting the quiet envelop me. Tomorrow would bring new challenges: planning for Operation Healing Hand, managing the continued media interest, supporting my mother through her upcoming surgery and divorce. But tonight, in this moment, I allowed myself to feel a quiet pride in who I had become, not in spite of the obstacles Marcus had placed in my path, but in part because of them. Each time he had tried to diminish me, I had been forced to grow stronger, to work harder, to prove not just to him but to myself that I was worthy of the path I had chosen. In the end, his greatest gift to me had been the resilience I developed in overcoming his doubt. I turned back toward the hospital, toward the work that awaited me, toward the purpose that defined me. Admiral Elara Reed, surgeon, leader, daughter. And now, perhaps, inspiration to others facing their own battles against those who would deny their potential. The stars continued their silent vigil overhead, witnesses to a journey still unfolding, still revealing its purpose with each life saved, each challenge overcome, each doubt transformed into determination. I had silenced my stepfather not with words, but with the undeniable evidence of a life well lived. And in that, I had found a victory more complete than any he could have imagined. 3 weeks after my mother's press conference, I stood in the Pentagon's main briefing room, the weight of expectation heavy in the air. Cameras lined the back wall, journalists filled every seat, and military officials stood at attention along the perimeter. Operation Healing Hand was no longer just a strategic initiative, it had become a symbol, a statement about leadership and capability that transcended its humanitarian goals. Admiral Reed will take your questions now, announced the Pentagon spokesperson, stepping aside as I approached the podium. I surveyed the room, meeting the gaze of the assembled press with the same steady calm I maintained in the operating room. The first hand shot up immediately. Admiral, how do you respond to critics who say your appointment as commander of Operation Healing Hand is politically motivated, a response to your stepfather's allegations rather than merit-based? Direct and confrontational, exactly what I'd expected. I leaned slightly into the microphone, my voice measured and confident. Operation Healing Hand was conceived 2 years ago as a comprehensive approach to combat medicine in crisis zones. My involvement began during the planning stages, based on my experience developing the Reed method for field vascular repair. Politics didn't create this initiative, and politics won't determine its success. Results will. Another reporter stood before I could call on them. Your stepfather claimed you lacked the emotional stability for command. Yet now you're leading the largest humanitarian medical operation in a decade. Should the American public be concerned? I allowed myself a small smile. I've performed over 4,000 surgeries in combat zones. I've made life and death decisions under artillery fire. I've trained hundreds of medics and doctors to operate in the most challenging conditions imaginable. Judge me by those results, not by the opinions of someone who has never served. The questions continued, some thoughtful, others deliberately provocative. I answered each with the same professional detachment, refusing to be drawn into personal attacks or defense. When the final question came, it was from a young female reporter in the back row. Admiral Reed, you've become an unexpected symbol for women in military leadership. What message do you have for young women facing similar doubts about their capabilities or right to command? I paused, considering my words carefully. This wasn't just about me anymore. Leadership isn't about gender. It's about competence, courage, and commitment. When someone questions your right to lead, don't waste energy defending yourself with words. Demonstrate your capabilities through action. Excellence is the most powerful response to doubt. As the briefing concluded, I gathered my notes, nodding acknowledgement to the Joint Chiefs seated in the front row. Admiral Jackson caught my eye, offering a subtle nod of approval. The path to this moment had been neither easy nor expected, but I stood here now, not as a woman defending her right to command, but as a leader preparing to execute a mission of critical importance. Outside the briefing room, Commander Hargrove waited, tablet in hand with the latest logistics for our deployment. Nicely handled, Admiral, he said as we walked briskly toward the secure planning room. Especially that last question. Truth is easier to maintain than fabrication, I replied, accepting the tablet and scanning the updated personnel rosters. Any word from the advance team? They've secured the primary site and begun equipment setup. Local medical staff are eager to start training. I nodded, satisfied with the progress. Operation Healing Hand would establish 5 advanced surgical centers in conflict zones across 2 continents, each staffed by military medical personnel working alongside local doctors. The goal wasn't just to provide immediate care but to create sustainable trauma systems that would continue saving lives long after we departed. And my mother's surgery? I asked, the question less professional but no less important. Hargrove's expression softened slightly. Scheduled for tomorrow morning. Transport is arranged for you to be there and return before deployment. Thank you, James. We spent the next several hours finalizing deployment details, personnel assignments, equipment needs, security protocols. The scale of the operation was unprecedented, combining military precision with medical expertise in a way that had never been attempted at this level. If successful, it would transform combat medicine and humanitarian response. If it failed, the consequences would be measured in lives lost and opportunities squandered. The stakes were high, but this was exactly the kind of challenge I had trained for throughout my career. Every difficult surgery, every impossible decision, every battle against doubt and dismissal had prepared me for this moment. As night fell over Washington, I found myself alone in the officers' quarters, reviewing final preparations for the next day. My phone rang, a number I hadn't seen in weeks. Marcus. I stared at the screen, debating whether to answer. What could he possibly have to say now? After the public humiliation of my mother's press conference, after the Pentagon's unequivocal support of my command, after the acceleration of Operation Healing Hand, what more could he want? Curiosity won out. I accepted the call but said nothing, waiting. Elara. His voice sounded different, subdued, lacking the commanding tone he'd always adopted with me. I need to speak with you. I'm listening, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. Not over the phone. He hesitated. I'm outside the base. I've been cleared for a visit. The request surprised me. It's late, Marcus. I deploy in 36 hours. I know. Another pause. Please, Elara. 10 minutes of your time. Something in his tone, vulnerability, perhaps, or desperation, made me reconsider my instinct to refuse. Wait at the main gate. I'll have someone escort you. 20 minutes later, Marcus sat across from me in a small conference room, looking diminished somehow. His usually immaculate appearance was slightly disheveled, his confident posture replaced by a hunched uncertainty I'd never seen in him before. Thank you for seeing me, he began, his eyes not quite meeting mine. Why are you here? I asked directly. Time was too valuable to waste on pleasantries. He placed a folder on the table between us. Your mother's medical records. Her oncologist sent them to me by mistake, habit, I suppose. I thought you should have them before her surgery tomorrow. I reached for the folder, surprised by this unexpected consideration. You could have had these sent through official channels. I could have, he agreed. But I needed to see you in person. I waited, saying nothing, allowing the silence to draw him out. I've lost everything, Elara. The words came slowly, as if extracted at great cost. My wife. My reputation. My position at the firm. The partners asked me to take a leave of absence after your mother's press conference. Despite everything, I felt a flicker of sympathy. I'm sorry about the firm. That was never my intention. He shook his head. No, it wasn't your doing. It was mine. He looked up finally, meeting my gaze directly. I've spent 18 years trying to make you smaller. Trying to force you into a life I understood rather than the one you were meant for. The admission stunned me. In all our years of conflict, Marcus had never once acknowledged his attempts to undermine me. Why? I asked simply. Because every time I looked at you, I saw him. Your father. Marcus's hands tightened on the edge of the table. The hero I could never be. The man your mother never stopped loving, even after she married me. I considered. His words, seeing our shared history through a new lens. Marcus had never served, had never understood the call to duty that had defined both my father's life and my own. His attacks hadn't been just about me, they had been about his own insecurities, his own sense of inadequacy compared to the legacy my father had left. I'm not asking for forgiveness, he continued when I remained silent. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I see it now, what I tried to take from you. And I wanted to tell you, before you deploy, that I was wrong. About all of it. The admission hung in the air between us, unexpected and transformative. For 18 years, Marcus had been the voice of doubt in my life, the persistent skeptic. Questioning every achievement, diminishing every success. To hear him acknowledge the harm he had caused was both vindicating and strangely hollow, too little, too late, yet somehow still significant. Thank you for the medical records, I said finally, rising from my chair. And for your honesty. He stood as well, uncertainty in every movement. Your mother's lucky to have you, Elara. I never told you that, but it's always been true. As security escorted him out, I watched his retreating figure, shoulders slumped, head bowed, a man finally confronting the consequences of his own bitterness. There was no satisfaction in seeing him diminished, only a quiet relief that his power to affect me had finally been broken, not through my efforts but through his own actions. I spent that night reviewing my mother's medical records, consulting with colleagues about her upcoming procedure, ensuring every precaution would be taken. As dawn broke, I boarded a military transport to Philadelphia, where her surgery would take place. The trip was brief but necessary, a reminder that even admirals had personal responsibilities that couldn't be delegated. My mother was awake when I arrived at the hospital, her face lighting up as I entered her room. Elara. I didn't expect you until later. I kissed her cheek, settling into the chair beside her bed. I wanted to speak with your surgical team before they took you in. She smiled knowingly. Checking up on them? They're quite competent, you know. I'm sure they are. But you're my mother. We talked quietly as the morning progressed, about her recovery plans, about the upcoming deployment, about the future she was building without Marcus. There was a lightness to her now, a return to the woman I remembered from childhood, before grief and an unhappy marriage had dimmed her spirit. I saw him yesterday, I told her finally. Marcus. Her expression grew cautious. What did he want? To apologize, I think. In his own way. I hesitated, then decided she deserved the full truth. He brought your medical records. And he admitted he was wrong about me. About everything. She reached for my hand, her fingers cool against mine. Does that change anything for you? I considered the question carefully. It doesn't erase the past. But maybe it helps me understand it better. Before she could respond, a nurse entered to prepare her for surgery. I stood, military training asserting itself in my straight posture and calm demeanor despite the personal nature of the moment. I'll be here when you wake up, I promised, squeezing her hand once more. I know you will. Her smile was serene, confident. You've never let me down, Elara. Not once in your life. I watched as they wheeled her toward the operating room, remembering all the times she had supported my dreams even when she didn't fully understand them. She had let me become who I needed to be, had defended that right even against her own husband. Her courage had taken a different form than mine. But it was courage nonetheless. The surgery lasted 4 hours. I spent the time reviewing Operation Healing Hand protocols on my tablet, answering urgent communications from my team, maintaining the discipline that had carried me through countless crises. When the surgeon finally emerged, his expression told me everything I needed to know before he spoke. The procedure was successful, Admiral Reed. We got clear margins. She's in recovery now. Relief washed through me, a wave of emotion I allowed myself to feel fully before compartmentalizing it away. Thank you, doctor. I'd like to see her as soon as she's stable. My mother was groggy when I entered the recovery room, but her eyes found mine immediately. Did they tell you? She murmured. They did. You did great, Mom. So did you. Her hand reached for mine again, her grip surprisingly strong despite the anesthesia. I want you to remember something, Elara. Something your father told me before his last deployment. I leaned closer, not wanting to miss a word. He said, the measure of our lives isn't in what we achieve, but in who we become while achieving it. Her eyes held mine intently. You've become exactly who you were meant to be. Don't ever doubt that. The words settled deep within me. A truth I had been reaching for throughout my career. Success wasn't just about rank or recognition, it was about integrity, about facing challenges without compromising your essential self, about becoming more rather than less through adversity. I stayed with my mother until she drifted back to sleep, then made arrangements for her post-operative care. A car waited to take me back to the airfield, back to the responsibilities of command and the mission that awaited me. As I left the hospital, my phone buzzed with a message from Commander Hargrove. Advanced team reports all sites ready. Awaiting your arrival. The deployment phase of Operation Healing Hand was about to begin. 36 hours later, I stepped off a transport plane into the harsh sunlight of our primary operating location, a converted school building in a conflict zone that had seen too much death and too little healing. Medical personnel snapped to attention as I approached, a mixture of military discipline and medical professionalism evident in their bearing. Welcome to Alpha Site, Admiral, greeted the site commander, a seasoned combat surgeon I had personally selected for this critical role. We're fully operational and have already treated 17 critical cases. I nodded approvingly, taking in the organized chaos around us, equipment being unloaded, triage areas being established, local medical staff being oriented to our protocols. This was the culmination of years of planning, months of intense preparation, and weeks of overcoming obstacles both professional and personal. Show me, I said simply. For the next several hours, I toured the facility, speaking with every team member, reviewing procedures, identifying improvements. This wasn't a ceremonial inspection, it was a hands-on assessment by a commander who understood every aspect of the operation from the ground up. In the main surgical suite, I paused to observe a procedure being performed by one of our younger surgeons, assisted by a local doctor learning our techniques. The patient was a teenage boy, victim of an IED blast that had shattered his femur and severed a major artery. The kind of injury that would have been fatal just a few years ago. The surgeon looked up, surprised to see me observing. Admiral Reed. We're implementing your vascular repair technique. Carry on, I encouraged. You're doing excellent work. I watched as they completed the procedure, noting the seamless teamwork between our surgeon and the local doctor. Maps covered the walls, displaying the locations of our 5 treatment centers and the surrounding conflict areas. Status reports flowed in continuously, each confirming what I already felt: this operation was succeeding beyond our most optimistic projections. Commander Hargrove entered, carrying 2 cups of what passed for coffee in this austere environment. All 5 sites are now fully operational, Admiral. We've treated over 70 critical patients in the first 24 hours. I accepted the coffee gratefully. And the training component? Exceeding expectations. The local medical personnel are adapting to our techniques quickly. Several have already performed procedures independently under supervision. Pride swelled within me, not personal pride, but the deeper satisfaction of seeing a vision realized, of knowing that lives were being saved because of work I had helped pioneer. There's something else you should see, Hargrove added, setting up a tablet. This aired on American networks this morning. The screen showed a news broadcast, the anchor's expression serious as she introduced the segment, Operation Healing Hand, the ambitious military medical initiative led by Admiral Elara has transformed combat medicine in its first week of deployment. Our correspondent has this report from the front lines. The footage shifted to scenes from our various treatment centers, surgeons working alongside local doctors, patients receiving care that would have been impossible weeks ago, medical personnel adapting to challenging conditions with innovative solutions. These remarkable results, the correspondent continued, come just 1 month after Admiral Reed faced public criticism from her stepfather questioning her qualifications for command. Today, those questions have been definitively answered. Through action rather than words. The segment ended with a brief interview with a local doctor, his face alight with new knowledge and hope. Admiral Reed's team isn't just saving lives, they're teaching us to save our own people. This is what true leadership looks like. Hargrove switched off the tablet. Thought you should see that. I nodded, unexpectedly moved by the validation. Not because I needed it, but because it represented the triumph of competence over criticism, of results over rhetoric. Thank you, James. I set down my coffee, ready to return to work. Now, let's discuss tomorrow's surgical schedule. I want to perform demonstrations at each of the 5 sites over the next week. As we bent over the logistics map, planning movements between treatment centers, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. From the 12-year-old girl whose world shattered with her father's death, to the medical student determined to save others from similar loss, to the combat surgeon who had revolutionized field techniques, to the admiral now leading the largest humanitarian medical operation in military history, each step had been shaped by both challenge and choice. Marcus had tried to define me through his doubt, to confine me within the limits of his understanding. For too long, I had measured myself partially through his critical lens, working twice as hard to prove my worth against his persistent skepticism. But standing here now, overseeing an operation that would save thousands of lives and change combat medicine forever, I recognized a fundamental truth: we are not defined by others' limitations, but by our own courage to exceed them. The next morning, I performed the first demonstration surgery at Alpha Site, a complex arterial repair on a young woman injured in a mortar attack. Local doctors crowded the observation area, watching intently as I narrated each step, explaining the principles behind the techniques I had developed. The key is maintaining blood flow while you work, I explained, my hands moving with practiced precision. Traditional approaches require clamping the vessel completely, which creates a ticking clock for tissue death. This method allows partial flow throughout the repair. As I completed the procedure, I stepped back, gesturing for one of the local surgeons to close. Now you try. I'll guide you through it. The young woman, Dr. Farah, according to her name tag, stepped forward nervously but determined. Her hands trembled slightly at first, then steadied as she focused on the task. I stood beside her, offering quiet guidance when needed, but mostly allowing her to apply what she had observed. When she completed the final suture successfully, a spontaneous round of applause broke out among the observers. Dr. Farah looked up, surprise and pride mingling on her face. Excellent work, doctor, I said warmly. You've just saved this patient's limb, and quite possibly her life. As we left the operating room, Dr. Farah stopped me with a hesitant touch on my arm. Admiral Reed, may I ask you something? I nodded, curious about what this capable young surgeon wanted to know. How did you do it? She asked, her voice low but intense. Become who you are, despite all those who said you couldn't? In my country, women are told so many things are impossible. For us. The question caught me off guard with its directness, its hunger for more than just medical knowledge. This woman didn't just want to learn my surgical techniques, she wanted to understand the internal strength that had made them possible. By refusing to accept the limitations others tried to place on me, I answered honestly. By focusing on the work itself rather than the obstacles. And by remembering that excellence is the most powerful response to doubt. She nodded slowly, absorbing my words. I will remember this. And I will teach others, just as you have taught me. In that moment, I understood that Operation Healing Hand was creating more than just medical capacity. It was fostering a new generation of leaders who would face their own doubts and obstacles with greater courage because of what they witnessed here. As the week progressed, I traveled between all 5 sites, performing demonstrations, mentoring local doctors, and overseeing the expanding impact of our mission. Each location told the same story: lives being saved, knowledge being transferred, hope taking root where despair had previously flourished. On the final day of my inspection tour, I received a call from Admiral Jackson. The secretary is impressed, Elara, he said without preamble. The success metrics from Healing Hand have exceeded every projection. They're talking about extending the operation by 6 months and expanding to 3 additional sites. The teams would welcome that, I replied, already mentally calculating the resources we would need. The local medical personnel are advancing faster than we anticipated. With more time, we could establish fully independent trauma centers. That's exactly what the secretary wants to hear. Jackson paused, then added, Your mother called the Pentagon today. She's recovering well and wanted you to know. Thank you, sir. I spoke with her yesterday. She's a remarkable woman. Like her daughter. The compliment was delivered matter-of-factly, without sentimentality. The Joint Chiefs are unanimously recommending you for the Distinguished Service Medal. The ceremony will be upon your return. After the call ended, I stood on the rooftop of our Alpha Site facility, watching the sun set over a landscape that had seen too much suffering. Below, medical teams continued their work, lights glowing in the surgical suites where lives were being saved, knowledge was being shared, and a legacy was being built that would outlast my presence here. In that quiet moment of reflection, I thought of my father, who had given his life in service to something greater than himself. I thought of my mother, who had found her voice after years of silence. I thought of Marcus, who had finally confronted the bitterness that had driven him to try to diminish me. And I thought of the path that had brought me here, not despite the obstacles, but in part because of them. Each challenge had forced me to grow stronger. Each doubt had pushed me to become more certain of my capabilities. Each attempt to confine me had only expanded my determination to exceed artificial limitations. The horizon stretched before me, vast and full of possibility. Operation Healing Hand was just the beginning, a foundation upon which to build new approaches to combat medicine, new pathways for humanitarian response, new opportunities to transform crisis into healing. I had silenced my stepfather not through argument or retaliation, but through the undeniable evidence of excellence. I had answered his doubt with achievement, his criticism with competence, his attempts to diminish me with the reality of lives saved and knowledge shared. In the end, the most powerful response to those who question your worth is not to defend yourself with words, but to demonstrate your value through action. To become so good at what you do that your results speak louder than any criticism ever could. As night fell fully over our medical compound, I turned back toward the stairs, toward the work that continued below, toward the purpose that had guided me through every challenge and would continue to light my path forward. Admiral Elara Reed, surgeon, leader, teacher, healer. Defined not by others' limitations, but by my own courage to exceed them. This is how we answer doubt. This is how we claim our place. This is how we change the world, one life, one lesson, one victory at a time. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.